Hi. Okay, I've tried to film. I have filmed my July wrap up already, but I also have a new desk set up. So you are in a slightly different place, and it is a standing desk. And my standing desk does this every time I put my hand down on it. And I put my hand down every 3 fucking seconds in that last video. So we are refilming this, and I'm just going to include my September wrap up as well in this video because I had some issues in September around reading that resulted in, I believe it was 8 DNFs and 3 actual books that I finished. So we're just going to clear all of this up. I'm gonna talk about it now. Where is my book tracker? Oh, also, I shouldn't be allowed in TK Maxx because I now have a water bottle that requires 2 hands to hold it or pick it up or take it anywhere when it is full. So it lives on my desk. Okay, so we're just going to wrap up all of August and all of September, and I'm going to do it in chronological order. So I'll tell you what I read in what order. In August, I started 8 books and finished 7. Pretty decent. In September, I started 11 books and I finished 3. I feel like there should be some sort of award for that because I think that's quite impressive. September really wasn't the fucking month for reading. I was doing so many other things. I was applying and interviewing for new jobs. I have a new job now, it's all good, but it took up a lot of time. I was also finishing off my step challenge because I did not quite 1 million steps in 3 months. The goal was to do 1 million steps in 3 months, and I did 918,000, which is still a win for someone that likes to sit on the sofa and do nothing. That was another reason I got a standing desk, because now I have a little like walking pad. So I've been playing Baldur's Gate and walking, and that's like half my step goal for the day in an hour. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Also, you have to like tilt your head to one side if you don't want to get knocked out by this thing. It's cost me £7. I'm quite pleased with it. The first book I read in August was The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. I gave this a 4-star. I listened to the audiobook on Script and I was doing a lot of walking, so I enjoyed like the adventure aspects of it. I did enjoy this book. I think it was a little too hyped up because I didn't enjoy it that much. I love me a good pirate adventure story. I am a slut for Pirates of the Caribbean. I loved the idea of this middle-aged pirate captain getting her crew back together and going off on another adventure. That really appealed to me. I really enjoyed the heist aspects. I really enjoyed the poisoner, whose name I've completely forgotten already. I thought the characters were all very themselves. They were each, they had their unique components that tied in the story nicely. I guess it just kind of fell apart for me in the Feywild aspects of things. And I don't think I have ever not wanted a book to have a fantastical element to it, but I think I almost feel like this could have been better if it didn't have a fantastical element to it, because in this book she's been hired to look for a missing noble's daughter who has run off with this mercenary who has been asking lots of questions about Amina herself, because Amina has infamous reputation. I mean, you've probably heard all this before. Everyone's been talking the hind leg off a donkey about this book. It had loads of hype when it first came out. I think it set itself up really well. And up until the halfway point, I was there for it. I was here for it. Didn't super enjoy the last third of the book. Just wasn't that interested. Could have done with something a little bit different. But it's not my book, I didn't write it. It was fine. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I did enjoy this. I was expecting. A sort of cosy murder mystery full of old English people. That is exactly what I got. What I wasn't expecting was the like dual POVs to like throw me off, because it's one of those books where they don't always tell you whose POV you're reading. You've got to work it out from context, which is fine when you've been introduced to all the main characters, but then they would jump to a POV from someone who we'd never touched on before, and then it got a bit confusing. But it did all wrap itself up really nicely. I couldn't predict the ending, but I don't think I was really trying, so take that as you will. It was quintessentially British, and I enjoyed that so much. If you want something with like proper English, like Midsummer Murders, all of those English murder mysteries that have literally no stakes at all apart from the fact that someone was murdered, read this book. Probably read the whole series. I haven't read the whole series yet, but I will. I'll get there. I have to get through my physical TBR and my current series list first, because that's what I've told myself before the end of the year. I need to cut that down because I have a very large stack of books in my bedroom and a lot of books, a lot of series that I've started and just not finished. So we're working on that first, but I will get to it. I will get to it because it is on my series tracker. So if anyone wants a Christmas present for me, the rest of that series would be great. Then I started All the Living and the Dead by Hayley Campbell. This was a non-fiction book I got from the library about people that work in like the death industry. So crime scene cleanup, funeral people. Why can I not think of anyone else? What is my fringe doing? Hello. Crime scene cleanup, anything like that, basically. Anything that deals with death. And it was sort of, I think the author had some of her own career was based in some of those industries, and she was interviewing some people. And I didn't get very far in. I don't super enjoy reading non-fiction with my eyes. In my ears, fantastic, love it, can't get enough of it. With my eyes, I really fucking struggle. So that was the only reason I put this down. If it comes up on Scribd, I will absolutely give it a listen. But at this moment in time, I do not have the spoons to absorb it through my eyeballs. So that is why I DNFed it. I then reread the first trilogy in the Elderling series by Robin Hobb. I love the whole series, all the trilogies, 9 of them or something stupid. All of the Elderling stuff that Robin Hobb has read, I love. I read them in the space of a year. That was all I read for a year, nothing but Robin Hobb, and that was what got me back into reading after the sort of post-teenage university slump. So they mean a lot to me, and like I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about when I read them the first time. And now I have even more thoughts and feelings now that I've read them again. I don't think it's ever going to see the light of day, partly because it was another one of like these videos when everything was wobbling and I hated it, but also because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings. I came to some conclusions, having evolved as a reader since I last read them, that made me uncomfortable. I decided I actually don't like Fitz very much. I feel indignant for him quite a lot of the time, but he is an idiot. He is an idiot so much of the time, and it's infuriating, and I don't have the patience for that. I also came to the conclusion that Verity is the villain in the first trilogy. Maybe not the villain, because the villain is, spoilers, Regal. But I think Verity is a villain too, and I hadn't come to that conclusion before, and that kind of rocked my world a little bit. But yeah, I filmed a whole like brain vomit rant about all my feelings because they were just so jumbly in my brain. Especially as this time around I listen to them on audiobook, so I tend to pick up more details on audiobook if I'm doing the appropriate activity, which was commuting to work. So I wasn't just skim reading and missing things. But yeah, I have an abject hatred towards most of the people in Fitz's life. I don't think I like or respect any of them. And I think that's I think that's proof of Robin Hobb's skill in writing, is that they're all so human. They're all so flawed. Every single character she writes is so flawed and so individual. And it just made me so angry. The first 2 books are my favourite because they take place in Buckkeep. And Buckkeep is like the one place I would go if I could pick anywhere to go in like a fictional series. That is where I would go. Specifically Patience's room, because if you know, you know. But the 3rd book could have been half as long if basic communication happened. Sorry, not sorry. So yes, I read those 3. They produced a lot of emotions in my brain. And I did try and start the one that comes after that, and then decided I couldn't take that much Fitz. Even with him all grown up, I couldn't take it, so I had to put that down again. After I read that trilogy, I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I fucking loved this. I loved this book so much. I didn't think I was going to. I picked it up when it was 99p on my Kindle. Like, it was a throwaway, fuck it, that looks fun, maybe I'll read it if I'm feeling a bit like, dunno. So I did read it when I was feeling a bit, dunno. I read it on my lunch break at work and loved it. I read half of this book during my work shift because I had it out on the Kindle app on my phone when there were no customers in the store. Just reading it so fucking fast. I loved it. It kind of gave me, what's it called? Miss Peregrine vibes, with the like house full of orphans and grumpy people and very specific rules kind of things. But it is much more contemporary. It's much more funny. I can't remember how funny Miss Peregrine was, but it was very good. Highly recommend it. That is my first foray into like romantasy, and I think I enjoyed it so much because it was contemporary rather than any other kind of nonsense. I'm not, I want to say I'm not a fantasy girly. No, I am a fantasy girly. I want to say I'm not a romantasy girly. But given that this is the only book that I've tried that is ostensibly romantasy, and I loved it and gave it 5 stars, I'm not sure I can say that anymore. We shall see. We're just gonna not label. Maybe that's the way forward. We're just gonna not label. And then lastly, in August, I read Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. This was a little bit of a disappointment. I didn't realise this was a novella before I pre-ordered it. I had this pre-ordered as soon as it was announced. I fucking love T. Kingfisher, and I even more love it when she retells fairy tales, which is exactly what this is. It's a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, and it is 150 pages long. It is like this thin, and I really wasn't impressed when I opened the box. And was like, oh shit, I paid £17 for this much book. It's a pretty book, but it took me an hour and a half to read, and then I was done. So I'm a little bit annoyed at that, which I think influenced my enjoyment of the book, which was good. I think it's an interesting retelling. I love that the main character is called Toadling. It's a fucking fantastic name. I wish there was more fae elements to the story. I think I just want T. Kingfisher to write a fae book. That's really all I want from life. I feel like that would give me the grown-up version of what the Spiderwick Chronicles were, and I was hoping that was going to be this book, and it wasn't. So there was that element of disappointment. But it was a well-written book. It was a really interesting flip on some of the stereotypes. It was a little bit horrific at times, which was like a pleasant surprise. So I would recommend it, especially if you're working your way through all the T. Kingfisher books, which you should be. Definitely read this one. I think I was just a little bit disappointed because I had put it on a pedestal like this fucking high before I'd even seen the book. So that's on me. That's a me problem, that's not a you problem, and that's fine. That was all the books I read in August. September's going to be a quick one. So we're going to start with the ones I DNF'd because there's just so fucking many of them. I DNF'd The Thousand Eyes by A.K. Larkwood. This is the sequel to The Unspoken Name, which I absolutely loved. I gave it 5 stars. I got about 4 chapters into this sequel before deciding that I didn't think it needed a sequel. I think the first book could have been standalone and it would have been fine, and that's all I personally needed from the series. I didn't need an extension. It felt a bit sort of... Obviously I didn't read the whole thing, so I don't know how it would have tied in, but I didn't feel like it needed a sequel. So I stopped reading it. I didn't have the spoons. Then I started to read Cackle by Rachel Harrison. I have no time for self-pitying protagonists that wallow in just self-pity, just constant wallowing self-pity. Essentially, it's not really a spoiler because I think it's kind of in the blurb and it's right at the beginning of the book. This girl has broken up with her long-term boyfriend, or rather she has been broken up with by the long-term boyfriend. She's not super happy about it, but they're still living together, trying to make things work. She's trying so hard to keep the banter going that they've always had, and it's cringy and painful, and I hated it, and I put it down. I couldn't stand it, because then she moves to this new town and she's still mopey and texting this ex-boyfriend who is clearly just trying to be polite. And then she meets a hot lady in a shop and is suddenly blown away, and it's like, for fuck's sake, just learn to stand on your own, please. I don't have time to sit here and watch you become the person that you need to be. So I put the book down, and then I was okay again. Then I DNF'd The Forgotten Beasts of Eld by Patricia A. McKillop. She is the same author that wrote Odd Magic that I really enjoyed at the beginning of the year. I picked this up in bookshop on Park Street in Bristol, and I really wasn't expecting to see. It was one of those bookshops where it's not a second-hand bookshop. They just sell every book for £4. It's the last bookshop, if you know, you know. But I was just shocked that they had an author that I knew actually did have other books that I wanted to read. It's about is she a witch? A lady with magic on the top of a mountain who lives with these magical creatures, who is one day given a baby and told to look after the baby, and she does, and much later someone comes back from the baby and plot ensues. I just wasn't interested enough in this book. It was written a while ago. I want to say it was written, 70s. So it was written in 1974. So there was the style of writing is different to anything I've been reading recently, which is fine, but it felt like I was being held at arm's length from the characters, which made it then difficult to sympathise with any of the characters. And you know when someone is introduced in a book and you go, oh, okay, they're important, they're probably going to crop up again, I should probably pay attention to them. None of the characters felt like that, and then they kept cropping up anyway. So I was just a bit confused by that. I wasn't particularly interested in where the plot was going. There were cool themes of feminism and you don't get to boss me about because you're a king, and that excited me, but there just wasn't enough of it to keep me going through the book, and I was having kind of a bad brain time, so I put it down. I'm not saying I'll never read it again, which I do for most DNFs, but yeah, that wasn't for me at that point. I then, like I said earlier, started reading Fool's Errand, which is the first in the second trilogy in the Elderlings series that is about Fitz, because I believe it's actually the third one chronologically. I couldn't do it. Didn't want to do it. As I said before, didn't like it, DNF'd it. Then I got Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. My hold came in the library. I was really excited for it. This is one of the ones that I put in my most anticipated books of the year, and it was crap. And it wasn't good, and I didn't like it, so I DNF'd it. It was really juvenile, and I don't know if I just missed a young adult tag. Maybe, I don't know. I just found it really juvenile. I found it uninteresting, unoriginal, and I don't like dragon books where the dragons can just turn into humans whenever they want, because then in my head that stops them being dragons in the cool way. Does that make sense? So yes, again, I was very much in that brain space of like, if you don't hook me right away, it's going away. And it was a library book, so it cost me nothing to give back. Then I DNF'd Unmasking Autism by Devon Price. Now, I've been reading this one on and off for like 2 to 3 months. The first 3 chapters of this book had such an impact on me that I had to put my library copy down, order my own copy from Amazon to come the next day, and then physically highlight and annotate most of the first 3 chapters. This book hit home in such a way that it made me emotional, that I was like gabbling to my partner about it, which doesn't often happen with books, and that I even felt the need to tell my mum and my dad to read it. I think this book is so important for people that are contemplating the possibility that they may have autism, specifically if you are female or a minority, because this puts symptoms and traits into real life context. You hear from real life people. You hear from Devon Price themselves, who is a, I want to say, psychiatrist, doctor. They're qualified, and it's on the book. Coming from real life people who aren't leaning into the stereotypes and the like accepted traits and qualities that have defined autism for so many years. They don't discredit them. They're simply, this book just adds to the list to make sure that everyone who falls under this umbrella understands how their brain works and how to cope with that. I think this book is so important, but unfortunately, because it was non-fiction, and because, like I said before, non-fiction through my eyes doesn't work as well as non-fiction through my ears, I put it down. I still own the book. I'm not getting rid of it. I've annotated it. That's the first time I think I've ever done that with a book. It's important. I just need an audio version if I'm going to finish it. It's also got exercises and stuff in it, which is quite cool. Then I also DNFed Leech. This was another library book. This is a horror about parasites told from the perspective of a hive mind, which is really cool. I read this immediately after finishing Baldur's Gate, like my first run through of Baldur's Gate 3. So the links there were kind of fun, but I think I was into it. I was into it for the first chunk, and then I wasn't into it anymore when they made the first reveal, because I think the first reveal was the only thing I was actually like intrigued about. It's a cool concept. Maybe I'll come back to it, maybe I won't. It just kind of didn't hold enough. It didn't hold enough suspense to keep me wanting any more after that point. Oh, I've missed a book on there. I'll add that in a second. Then I DNF'd The Memory of Babel, which is the 3rd book in the Mirror Visitor series by Christelle Debo. I read the first 2 books and loved them. I think it was 5 and a 4 star. Can't remember what order that was. Which are the 2 of the other books I read this month in September. But the 3rd one, this was another case of you could have stopped at 2 books. Like, you could have just wrapped it up at 2. You did not need to add 2 more books because it's a quartet. And it was just, spoilers, but it was more people shitting on, oh my god, Ophelia. It was more people just shitting on Ophelia, making her feel shit. She abandoned the group of friends and supporters that she had gathered and went off on her own, where other people just shat on her and were not very nice to her, and she got herself all worked up. And in horrible situations, and I wasn't here for it. You got yourself into a nice place. You got yourself into a sensible place. Why are you going to fuck around and find out? He doesn't deserve it. If you've read it, you understand. And then I read House of Roots and Ruin by Erin A. Craig. This is the 2nd book in it's the one after Sisters of Salt and Fortune. Salt and Sorrow. The watery sea one. I didn't realise this had a sequel for the longest time, and it popped up on my Amazon and I was like, hey, I recognise that cover. Hey, I've read the first book. So I read this one. This was very good. I enjoyed it a lot. It's really creepy. It's kind of like a horror gothic house. Kind of a romance, kind of not. Some interesting twists. But I could guess a number of the twists, which I don't usually do that. I'm not usually able to do that. So the fact that I could was kind of a sort of a mark against it. I did enjoy it. It was, for the vibes, like purely vibes, I was here for it. So here for it. Think big magnificent greenhouses, French inspired world, parties, paintings, a little bit of romance, a little bit of family mystery, a really cool scene under a lake, which I won't spoil, but you should read it. You don't need to have read the first book in order to read the second, but it does help, and the second book does spoil the first book, so just take that into account when reading. And finally, the last book on my list is Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee. I read this one by Scribd. I didn't realise it was so short. It is also another novella, which I didn't realise. It's about rock tamers, hunters. They use rocks to hunt manticores. It is cool. There was a good setup in itself. It is a well-rounded story that gave me nothing, taught me nothing, had no real messages to pass, and just felt like just a little story that she felt like writing for fun and then published. And that's okay. It didn't blow me away. It was a fun read. It's the first thing I've read by Fonda Lee. I quite like her writing. I think I enjoyed it because it was an audiobook. I don't know if I would have finished it had it not been an audiobook. But yeah, that was it. That's everything I read in August and September. Where am I at with my reading goal? I told myself I would read 90 books this month. Yeah. Oh my god, I'm on 89 books. So I've read 89 books out of 90. I am going to finish the book I'm reading today, which is exciting. So that'll be me up to speed. I'm not going to set myself another reading goal, like number wise. What I want to do is I just want to focus on reading all the physical books in my TBR pile that is like taking up room in the bedroom right now. And I want to focus on finishing series that I have already started.